Force the forest to change. Force the forest to change. Where again we believe.
Just wrapped up the first season of It, Welcome to Derry 1 week ago from last night, and had a little while to sit on it, have some thoughts on it, and wanted to have a little chat about it. So I called up my friend Nomar. He's here with me. We're going to talk a little bit about this pretty interesting show. I liked a lot of it. I think we're probably both going to have some interesting takes on different parts of it, but I definitely wanted to get Nomar's take here because as a fellow Mainer, I figure who best to judge a show based in our home state and about all the spooky shit that happens here than Nomar. And we're going to not really go episode by episode, but there will definitely be spoilers. I'm not going to bother. It's been a week. If you were going to watch it, probably don't listen to this podcast if you wanted to get away spoiler free. So anyways, Nomar, man, how you been?
Good. Thanks so much for having me. I love talking about all things Maine and especially Stephen King with another spooky boy. So I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, man. Hell yeah. It's always great to talk to you. It's been a minute. I think the last time we got to have a good conversation was probably at the paranormal fair. And we keep in touch online, but
yeah, the good old Fort Knox.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to go to those and catch up with, everybody that's able to make it to those when they throw them together like a week or two ahead of time and don't really tell anybody what's going on like they did last year.
It was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't even know what was going on, and I saw the notification. And I was like, "Well, at least I know Nomar is going to be there, so I guess I'll head on over."
Yeah.
Yeah, ended up being a good time. Nonetheless, we definitely have a lot to talk about on this topic because, man, we ate good for the last 8 weeks. That was, we did. I did peak. So I guess we'll start right off at the beginning with the first impressions of it because I did peak your reaction to the first episode, and you were not as completely blown away by that first episode as a lot of people were.
Yeah. So to me, all right, this is just all my opinion. Acadia After Dark, Reverend Redbeard, he does not condone any of my opinions, but I can't say a lot. Some of the new horror that's coming out for some reason is not hitting with me. There has been some absolutely phenomenal movies that I've absolutely adored. The Long Walk, phenomenal. Weapons, phenomenal. Good Boy, phenomenal. Those are like my top 3 movies of the year so far.
Yeah.
Or not so far, but like basically the top 3. I'm sure there's some others in there I'm forgetting. But The Conjuring Last Rites, I thought was god-awful. It was almost completely untrue. For some reason they made Judy 20 years younger. She was like 40 something when this happened. Like the baby didn't die and then come back to life, and the whole Tony Spera bullshit. it was a lot of bullshit, and he's an awful human being anyways. I have a lot of hot takes. I'm so sorry.
No, that's good. I'm actually very much of the same mind. Honestly, I said a little while ago, I was like, for a while, I've been over the Conjuring series.
Yeah.
Like, short of like the first one, Annabelle and the Nun, I've been pretty divested of it largely. So
yeah, that's fair. That's
most of the newest ones, it's like, they're still doing it. All right. Like,
Yeah. Black Phone 2, I thought was awful. I really liked the first Black Phone movie, but part 2 I thought was terribly written. It was the dialogue was shit. But it looked beautiful. Cinematography was amazing. And Ethan Hawke is always great, and he looked awesome. But it was, I don't know if you've seen Black Phone 2, but there's a whole scene at the end of Black Phone where it takes place on a frozen lake. And it, Welcome to Derry, episode 8, did what Black Phone 2 wanted to do. And Black Phone 2 could not pull it off, but Welcome to Derry did. It was in Black Phone 2, it was cringe. It was crazy. Like, Ethan Hawke is skating on on ice, and he's coming to kill, and some people can see him, but some people can't see him. But anyway, so Welcome to Derry like pulled off what Black Phone 2 could not. However, I'm clearly in the minority because people loved Black Phone 2, and it wasn't for me. It was dog shit in my opinion. But anyway, so the first episode of Welcome to Derry reminded me of blockbuster horror slop. And the car scene, which was the scene, one of the scenes in question that people really loved, there were some really great aspects to it. I love the little crazy kooky looking baby, the whole birth of it, the way the kids were acting weird in the backseat. I loved all of that. But I didn't care for the kid that much. I don't know why, but I didn't care for the kid that much. But I was really enthralled with, he's leaving Derry, he's in the movie theater, in Bangor or Derry, if you will. Like, all of that's kind of cool. And then the end scene of the first episode was wild. I was like, oh, just you kill off all your main characters. Okay, that's interesting. And I thought that was cool. But everything else, I was like, I'm not liking this. It felt like a lot of big Hollywood blockbuster horror slop, and I was like, oh no, because I've been seeing the previews for it, hyped to watch it, because I love me some Pennywise. I definitely love me some Skarsgård Pennywise. I mean, shout out to the old Pennywise, but I mean, damn, like Skarsgård does an amazing job. So I was very hyped for it. But once the episode ended, I was like, oh no. It had a lot of It Chapter 2 vibes, which wasn't my favorite. There's a lot of good stuff about It Chapter 2, but there's a lot of bad stuff too. And I was kind of feeling like it was a bit It Chapter 2 style. So I was like, oh no. And then episode 2, and I'm like, okay, this is a little bit better. But I still wasn't convinced yet. But anyways, those are my initial thoughts.
No, I actually can totally see where you're coming from there. I watched the first episode, and then I kind of had to sit with it for a little while, because I was like, I get where you're coming from. It did feel a little, I don't know, it had high points, but it also didn't do anything to really draw me in. And it felt, there were things I liked about it, and there were things that I was kind of like, I don't know if this is going to be the whole show. I was like, then that's going to be pretty one note, and we're not going to get much out of it.
Right.
One of the things, again, I did like, as you were saying, the whole thing with the family, the little demon baby thing was cool. That was like an interesting setup, but I totally understand and agree with you. I did not identify or like relate or care about the kid, like initially, Maddie there.
Yeah.
I was like, initially, I was just like, okay, like because you kind of already know from like Georgie, you're like, the first kid you meet is probably not going to have a great day.
Right.
like we've already established that as pretty much being the way things go in this show. So we were like, I went in, I was like, well, this kid's probably not going to make it. And so I didn't invest in him as a character. Didn't, okay, terrible, weird. The weird family was creepy as hell. That part was awesome.
Yeah,
that whole scene was really good.
It was tense,
And then, like, the introduction of some of the satellite characters was a good setup to kind of hook you in. It wasn't until I hit episode 8 that I realized that the first episode was not titled The Pilot because it was a pilot episode. I was so slow on the draw that I was like, oh, it was Leroy because he's a pilot and the episode was supposed to be about him.
Okay.
I didn't even put that together until like almost the end of the show. And I was like, oh, that's a cool title. Like, so that was how I was like, the initial episode just washed over me.
Right.
I did love the fact that they didn't mind killing off that first group.
Oh, dude, children. that was great because I'm like, okay, this is kind of like New Losers Club type stuff, and even though they do kind of get to that, it's more of a makeshift Losers Club. But anyway,
yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, it's the boys again, and the boys are supposed to be like kind of funny and and I don't know, I guess I was a little over it or something, or I just wasn't connecting with these kids. Yeah. And then you have this girl who turns out to be like the main character, or at least for the kids part. And I thought that was really cool for them to flip it, where there was like basically a girl lead, a female lead for this makeshift group of kids, but yeah, I just wasn't connected with those kids, and maybe that was by design because they die. And I was cool with it. And it was cool how they died. Like, I liked the theater scene. I really liked the scene in the kid's bedroom. I mean, probably a controversial take, but the lampshade of faces, skin, like talking, like that was pretty awful. But I'm also just coming off the Ed Gein series. And I was like, oh, wow. Is that just in the chaosphere, where they need to like kind of put this related sort of thing in there, and only related in horrorness, it's has nothing to do with Gein or anything. But I definitely did not like the Ed Gein show. I might have liked the first episode or two, but it went downhill fast.
I haven't been much on any of those documentaries that or like the docu-movie series things that they've done and stuff. None of those have really hit for me because like they all just feel weird. Like every single one of them, something about it, even the ones that are really like done well, I just end up being like, I don't know why this is a thing, but
yeah, it's definitely, it feels like it's glorifying them. But for me, the Dahmer season was amazing. Like, I was completely drawn in and absolutely loved it. And that had to do with the acting, you know what I mean? Like, the acting was just phenomenal. The story is god awful, obviously, but at least they stuck to a lot of true pieces. Like, there was more truth than fiction in the Dahmer series, as opposed to, is just the opposite in the Ed Gein series. It was much more fiction than truth. But anyways, but anyways, that first episode, it didn't draw me in. I didn't like the kids, and but there was some cool aspects like we just talked about. But once we got to episode 2, I'm like, okay, this is actually getting a little bit better. It's actually a different group of kids, and the way we got to start meeting them all, like, they didn't just do it over again, but in the 1960s, they're really trying to make it different, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. I have had a few conversations online with people who said similarly that they didn't get the kids at first, especially that first group. They just felt no attachment to them. And I thought about it a little bit, and I was like, well, it's kind of because I think, especially when you're talking like the modern streaming crowd of horror, they've been kind of spoiled by Stranger Things.
Sure.
because that's a show where like the children are relatively safe for the most part, and it's like it's still close enough to horror, but more sci-fi. And I've seen a lot of people draw that comparison between it, Welcome to Derry, and Stranger Things, and I
Absolutely.
definitely have like a lot of opinions on that as far as where they go in that whole thing, because I'm like, yeah, I got thoughts on that. We'll save that for a little later. But
Okay.
as far as like episode 2, when they started to introduce the new characters, and even I could say from like 2 till episode 3 or 4, I actually was very impressed by how they didn't lean too hard. Like you said, they didn't try to just do it
Yeah,
again.
and
But
make a
in the
new
1960s.
losers club. It was
Yeah.
they were very uh, uh, um, God, like makeshift group of kids that came together, and it really felt by happenstance. They weren't like a group of friends already established, like in the original It story. They like came together because of all the circumstances, and I just thought that was a cool way to do it.
Yeah, it gave way more layers and character development to be
Yeah,
had, which I
yeah,
think honestly, I get it where in the initial one, you've only got, I mean, the book, of course, is like huge. So you
yeah,
have so much more that they could build on the characters in there. But
yeah,
in the original movies, even when split up into two, it was still like a lot to try and fit into one movie. Where with the show, they were able to do a little more to expand on each individual person.
sure.
But even then, I also kind of looked at it too, because especially after that first episode where like the original group of children died, this new group comes in and they're kind of disparate. They're not really like a cohesive group or even
Yeah,
like associated at the beginning of the show.
yeah,
Spend the
yeah, yeah,
first couple episodes being like, who are going to be our like focal points
yeah, yeah, yeah.
as it went. And then it wasn't until like, of course, later in this, episodes when, they start hanging out after Maddie had come back and then they went to the sewers. It wasn't until after that you were like, oh, okay, this is like our core, you know, for me, anyways.
Yeah.
And I thought about it and I was like, well, why would they spend so much time building up these characters, which obviously matters to the story? And one thing I thought of was the series is definitely not so much about the individual characters as it is about Derry itself.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely telling the history of Derry in this season in particular.
Right.
It's not so much about just Pennywise, even though, of course, the Bob Gray stuff and all that.
Yeah.
It was more about just establishing this town.
Yeah.
Bangor for us, but Derry in the universe.
Yeah. And I think they did a good job with mirroring um what Bangor was during that time, like the way I understood it, where Bangor was seen as like a progressive state, but when you or city, not state,
Sure.
but once you looked a little bit closer, it was more like a lot of white people tolerating people of color as opposed to accepting people of color.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really great that didn't shy away from that, in the series.
Yeah, for sure. That was definitely a great layer to add to it, and
Yeah,
especially when you're creating a show in the '60s and you don't mention race as being a factor, even if you say, "Oh, it's small town Maine."
right.
If you don't mention it, I mean, realistically, Maine has just as much of a history with like racism and all that stuff as
Absolutely.
any other place in the United States. So to not at least acknowledge it.
Yeah, and they went
And show
they went beyond acknowledging it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It became like a pretty central point to a lot of the plot
Yeah,
of the whole, like, later half of the season,
yeah,
especially after episode 4, because then we get in the introduction of, um, Pennywise, his, like, the entity Pennywise. So Galoo, I think, was the name that
yeah,
the,
yeah, yeah,
Penobscots were giving to that spirit or entity or whatever. So I saw a lot of people in that episode in particular got mad.
yeah,
And that was where I saw a bit of a dip out of a certain group of people that you could tell were really in it just from the movie experience
right.
and didn't know anything further outside of it and the immediate lore in that, because there was a lot of people that when they found out, oh, this is not just a scary clown, it's an alien or a multi-dimensional being. Really, it goes outside
Yeah.
of just being an
Yeah.
alien.
Yeah. It's definitely multidimensional. Yeah.
So then they get that brought in the whole like cosmic horror aspect, which is one of my favorite parts of Stephen King's like works.
Yeah.
Everybody remembers like The Shining and stuff like that as like an individual story about a haunted hotel.
Right.
They don't look at the larger universe that is like played up in like the Dark Tower series and stuff like that, where you get to see that there's just like, we're only seeing a microcosm, like a little snapshot under a microscope of this much larger universe, and Pennywise is just one part of that.
Yeah. The outsider, the entity in the outsider, which we don't really get to see except for when it's manifested as a human, seems like a version of Pennywise that feeds off of grief as opposed to fear, and Pennywise feeds off of fear, so it's really interesting how that's just a little snapshot, microcosm or whatever of another different entity, still causing just as much havoc and grief and brutality as Pennywise, but affecting different areas of the world. It's interesting, the universe he's like quietly built.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty cool thing, and like, some people had not really known how to react to that, obviously, and I can, to some degree, I understand it if you didn't see that, but the fact that there was like, they did a very good job of not only establishing him as being that early on in the series without leaning too much into Pennywise being the entire focus of the show.
Yeah. Because Pennywise is just a part of it, but I wanted to go back a little bit with the cosmic horror. Stephen King does a really good job of making cosmic horror palatable, because it's not always palatable for a lot of people, and I can be victim of that. Some of Lovecraft stuff I just love, but some of it I'm just like, it's too much, it's too esoteric, because sometimes I just really want to know my horror, as opposed to, I don't want to, sometimes I don't want to make all of it up in my head. Sometimes I like being given a little bit of what the beast is or what the horror is, but not always. I mean, as horror fans, we can be, we don't know what we want all the time until we see.
We don't want to be spoon fed everything, but at the same time, we need something to work with.
Yeah. And again, that's it's not all the time for me, but for some reason, the way King does it, it really speaks to me. It makes it palatable, and I can really, once I understand, I guess, the mechanics or some of the psychology of it, then I can really kind of get spaced out with it. And I think he did a really good job with it, because it is fundamentally a cosmic horror story that's so down to earth. It's crazy.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that he does well, and it's part of what makes it so palatable to me is like you, like, I think most people look at, when they hear cosmic horror, they instantly go to Lovecraft, and obviously so, kind of the forefather of the genre, right? But I think that, like, while Lovecraft did a lot of things that kind of established the guidelines of it, people kind of miss the underlying theme, I think, in horror that made cosmic horror in that style so special. And it's not so much the individual aspects of one story, it's the unfathomability of it all. It's the fact that, like, we as humans are such a small part of this entire thing that we're an ant fighting the sun,
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I honestly think that it does very well, and Stephen King does well in some of his stories that touch on it, is that he's able to make it approachable because you're understanding it through the scope of this one perspective of a human usually.
Yeah.
It's not very often you get the peek behind the curtain. So then when you see in, like, it, where it's like this entity is never going away. It's not something that can be beat. It's not something that can be reasoned with. The one of the funniest parts of this entire series was when we get, I mean, skipping a little bit ahead, but when you get to where the military is literally thinking they're going to somehow or another manipulate
Right.
this entity. And it's like, wow, you want to talk about vastly underestimating what you're dealing with, which is so American military at the same time. But I was also like, I mean, it's cartoonish to the degree that they literally, when the whole thing was said and done, they then made it worse. It was like pouring gas on the fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were inconsequential in it ultimately. Like it would
Yeah,
have
they were.
continued on regardless. They didn't do anything. It's
Right.
just like they, for whatever reason, were just like, oh, we're gonna be able to control this. And it's like, what? No, who told you that? Like
Right. Right. You know, and that's interesting that you bring up the military part, because that's kind of like, you know, the first couple episodes, I was like, I don't know, but then it started getting better, and I'm like, okay, I'm into this. And then, the military stuff was getting more and more prominent, and it was cool seeing, the elder Hanlon and and his son. What's his son name?
Mhm.
Will Hanlon,
Yeah.
which is Mike's father. It's so interesting to think about. But
Yeah.
when the military aspect came into it, I'm like, oh, I think this might be kind of cheesy. I don't know if I like kind of like this conspiracy with this entity, and like I like it on paper, I think, but the way they were acting it out, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm fully behind this. Like, I like them being at the military base, which was Dow Air Force Base, for lack of a better thing. It didn't really look like that at all, but but like those parts of it were cool, and there was a little bit of a conspiracy going on, and was there alien tech that they were working on, because they were being secretive about stuff, and then to find out that they were trying to manipulate the Pennywise, or that they were looking into it. I was like, oh no, I think this is like a hair below. Like, what am I trying to say? Like, it almost seems like they were trying to be a little X-Files-esque, and it wasn't hitting for me.
Yeah.
But I kind of got over that pretty quickly. I just remember not really liking it, but then I really like Hanlon, and I liked his commanding officer. I forget his name, but he was really great. And then obviously I loved what's his name there? The fella that's also in The Shining. I forget his name.
Oh, Dick Halloran.
Halloran. Yeah, Halloran.
Yeah.
And once because we see the name tag, and we're like, wait a minute, what is this Halloran?
Yeah, I got so excited when I realized it was supposed to be him. I got unreasonably giddy about that.
Yeah. So like, I thought that aspect of it was cool, but once he started being a character and not just the guy not talking, I'm like, okay, this military part's going to be like kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, it definitely did a lot more for me than I thought, because I was very apprehensive in when they first introduced it. I was like, where can they really go with this? That's not going to be, like you said, kind of X-Files-y, or it's just a generic, like, military conspiracy, or they're covering something up, or they're trying to get a weapon or something. And sure, it was kind of all of those things, but at the same time, it was like none of them. And the way they did it still kept me interested, because one thing I was wondering, because they obviously did a fairly good job of tying certain things into it.
Sure.
And so I was wondering how exactly Leroy ended up with the farm. I was not like, well, how's that going to come about if he's in the military?
Right.
Well, they resolved that by the last episode. So
they
cool.
did. I mean, right at the end, but yeah.
Yeah, there was like a tack on at the end. They were like, oh crap, we forgot. And they tied it up, which I appreciate that, even if it's just a quick thing at the end. Okay, good for me. The other one that was like kind of with Will there, that was one that I was like very glad that they like did give that. The only one of those tie-ins to like it that I kind of fell flat for me was the one from the last episode where Margaret Tozier. Because first of all, I hated Margaret the whole series up until like that last couple episodes.
Oh wow. Okay.
She drove me crazy. drove me crazy.
I got to
at the
tell you,
beginning of the series.
I feel like Lily drove me crazy. I was not bought into Lily Bainbridge.
Yep.
There was some stuff about her story that like had to be told to make the series work, but I don't know if I didn't like the actress or if I didn't like the character. There was something, but for Marge, as time went on, I definitely didn't like her at first, but like episode 4 to 8, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, she feels like the lead character to me, and for some reason, her and Rich, I like them together. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I think after she, Pennywise did the thing with her eyes, I think that's when I started to like her. I don't know why I couldn't get on board with Lily. I'm still not on board with her. She was really annoying me when she had the that stone that
the dagger thing.
The dagger thing, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
But I understand that it was the dagger like making her act that way. Like I get that, but I don't know. It must be I don't like the actress or something, or I didn't like her acting job or something. But she just wasn't hitting for me. But and that's interesting though, a little bit opposite for you, because I liked Marge. But again, not till later. I didn't
okay, so like when I did like Marge was literally, and honestly, Rich carries 90% of that relationship for me, because I absolutely am fine with that. But it's literally, I liked her after she pulled down her eye patch in the cafeteria.
Okay.
It freaked out those girls. I was like, okay, she won some points with me. And then like the next episode is when shit hit the fan. So then it was just like everything kind of went out the window, and I was like, well, okay, at least she's not a horrible person. But
and
then that last episode, she did end up kind of being the main character realistically, because she's the one he like singled out. So that was a cool little thing to foreshadow the future at the same time as kind of like setting up some interesting theories. And because that brought in more of the cosmic horror stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it allowed Pennywise that exposition that we kind of needed to be like, this is all happening at once for him. And, I'm like, okay, so season 2 could actually bring in the original kids and bring in 1908 and 32 or whatever the year is after this one. You still there?
There's like there's a bunch of fire trucks going by my house all of a sudden.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I just heard it and I thought it was like coyotes howling, and then I was like, oh wait, no, that's a siren. I was like
but I also want to talk about
the sticks. I am. It's like I'm more worried about the coyotes out back than I was about literal fire trucks.
That's how it is up here, man.
But What do you got for me? I've got
so I also really liked Will and Ronnie. I thought all the stuff going on with Ronnie's dad was really reflective of the times, and that played a big part with the black spot and for the racism angle on it all.
Yeah, for sure. That episode specifically, I mean, of course, they did a very good job of keeping that relevant throughout the series, because they were always, even when the episode had like so much going on, they would always definitely like tie back to like where he was. And I like how, because man, they really got me invested in that storyline very early on. And then when the black spot episode started, I was like, okay, this seems like it could like go fine. And then pretty quickly when they all got in that dance hall, I was like, no, this is not going to go well. And especially because they have foreshadowed in the episode before how there's always like a major event that precedes the end of the feeding cycle.
Yeah.
And where Rose had been like, in that meeting and they had all discussed it, Danielle gave that information over to Dick when he did the mind thing with him, The Shining. That was like, that hit like a gut punch when it came to that scene, because that was like, you knew how bad it was going to be. Didn't know how like extreme that whole episode ended up. That last half was harrowing shit. That was wild.
It really was such an amazing job. The acting was absolutely stellar, and it was bad enough, everything that was happening. Like the standoff was tense, and then once they left and you knew that it was going to be set on fire and they're locked inside, and like that in itself, and them, trying to survive and trying to get out, all of that happening in and of itself was tragic and beautifully like haunting. And then Pennywise shows up, and it made it that much more sinister and brutal. And Pennywise was just like, feeding cycle's almost done, I'm eating everybody. So he was getting on adults, and it didn't matter to him, And I thought that was wild. I thought it was wild. It was amazing. And of course, one of the scenes towards the end when they're outside and Pennywise is talking to that woman's husband there. And like slices half his head off and stuff is crazy.
Yeah, that was a great part of the episode to me. I mean, of course, like the whole event leading up to it, because you started out, the first half of the episode was like pretty jubilant, and they had that whole like party scene where like the kids were like, dancing and stuff, and they were having a great time. And then immediately, like you said, that standoff is like so tense. And the whole like shooting, the burning of the building, the people being slaughtered and everything, that was like such a just tragic and just like brutal event. And you think like for a minute when it's over, you're like, oh, like you kind of like take a breath, and then it still ends up somehow upping the ante just that little bit more by the end of it, because then you realize like, oh, he's like just moving on now. He's just continuing on with the slaughter.
Yeah.
And that scene he had with Ingrid there was so cool.
Yeah, it was
like,
really good.
We got that peek behind where Pennywise came from, where the character of the clown came from.
Right.
Bob Gray. What did you think like how they portrayed that? Because I thought it was pretty interesting how they kind of like wrapped it up and made it so that could be its own story in like a subsequent season or something.
Yeah, it totally could be. But yeah, I like the Bob Gray stuff, because you're introduced to it, in the book, but the book doesn't get into a whole lot of who Bob Gray was. This was the Muschietti team like kind of doing their own thing with this whole background on Bob Gray, and I really liked that Ingrid really thought it was her father. And Pennywise was like, oh, so you're an idiot. I get it. No, I'm not your dad. But it was really great, though, how we got some behind the scenes on where that came from. And we kind of saw a pre-origin of it when he was actually taking on the physical appearance as a child. Which a dimensional entity coming to Earth or manifesting in Earth, however he got here, seeing that, oh, this is what I really need to eat, which is children's fear or whatever. And I might as well be a child. I might as well be one of them so I can be accepted among them. But then he realized that what kids really love is a clown or somebody that, can keep their attention.
Yes.
So I thought that aspect was really interesting, but we get that whole behind the scenes of like Bob Gray and his relationship with his daughter, which I thought was really great. The actual character of Bob Gray was interesting,
Yeah, that was really cool how they made me care about that character in like the span of 35 minutes.
Yeah. Like, because on his own, if we didn't see the relationship between he and his daughter, I don't know if I would have liked Bob Gray as much as I do now, because he kind of seems like he's just a kind of a bullshit carny kind of guy, and his personality and his speaking voice is kind of off-putting. But when you go ahead.
No, like so Bill Skarsgård in particular, his voice in his interpretation of not only Bob Gray but of Pennywise is so disturbing.
Yeah.
And And I thought about it a lot as to why, because I was a big fan of the original It with Tim Curry,
Sure.
and he had his own take on that voice.
Sure.
But his was like a little more, I mean, almost like jovial in a way. Like it had its menacing moments, but Bill Skarsgård, and especially when you hear him as Bob Gray, because Bob Gray, you hear just this is a dude with like a kind of a low range voice, which didn't like fit him like as a man. Like
Right.
his voice was just so odd and almost uncanny coming out of him.
Yeah.
But then you hear that voice, or more or less, you hear Pennywise, glue, whatever, filtered through his voice.
Yeah.
It takes on that element of this is what it sounds like if like a thing that doesn't understand anything about talking, doesn't understand our species, is speaking through this man. And he did it in such an interesting way that you could see the layers of it as he switched from Bob Gray to Pennywise.
Yes, you could see them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, man, this man has really nailed this character. And I behind the scenes thing I saw where he was interviewing about it, I guess Bill Skarsgård was very apprehensive about playing Pennywise again. And he had basically like only come back to the show because of his interest in portraying Bob Gray.
Okay.
Which I was like, okay, I see where, he did 2 long movies that I'm sure were hard to shoot. So I get where he probably wouldn't want to make that his whole career,
Yeah.
It's a very dark character. The guy gets a lot of dark roles, and I'm sure he doesn't want to be typecast as being like, creepy Pennywise guy forever, But nonetheless, I thought he did a fantastic job. He was like one of the creepier aspects of that. And Bob Gray in general was such an interesting part of the show. And then when we get to the last episode, and a lot of stuff in that last episode, I was like really blown away with how well they pulled off, because it was so much going on. One thing you had mentioned with the ice and the winter setting and everything, that was just such a visually stunning thing. Just so cool. And I mean, I've always been a fan of the winter, so that alone was like, oh, this is neat. But the way that they made the fog, because when I first saw the fog, I was like immediately thinking of the mist.
Yeah.
And then when they made it where it was like, inside of the fog, they really were in like their own pocket dimension.
They really were.
That were all like hypnotized and stuff.
Yeah.
That whole procession thing he had going across the friggin' frozen Penobscot.
I feel like the Muschietti team was really giving some Easter eggs to Stephen King fans. By seeing that mist rolling in, it really made people think of the mist, and then that procession of kids, and at the black spot, before they set the fire and stuff, one of the white guys said, give us what we want and we'll go away. And,
that's right.
Yeah. Well, which harkens back to Storm of the Century.
Yes.
And then with the kind of winter whiteout scene, and those kids in procession was kind of like the dream sequence from Storm of the Century, when all of the people of Little Tall Island were jumping off the cliff.
That's right.
So I feel like they were kind of giving some Easter egg to some other, Stephen King cinematic type of things.
Yeah, I love that stuff because it makes me think that they're fans, and they obviously had a love for the source material.
Oh, sure.
That they definitely did a good job of satisfying people that were familiar with it, but also keeping it approachable for people that didn't know enough.
Which is interesting because my girlfriend also watched it. And she's watched the movies, and I think she's also seen the miniseries, I think, but don't quote me on that. But she doesn't know the book. And so she really liked the first It 2017. And she thought, and she liked the 2019, end of it, more so for the closure. but she wasn't like the biggest fan of that movie, so that's basically all the lore that she has for it. So going into Welcome to Derry, she wasn't picking up on a lot of these Easter eggs that we were, and it made it for a less enjoyable watch because she wasn't like enamored with oh my god, that's the guy from The Shining, that's the younger version of the guy from The Shining, and oh my god, this is Will is Mike Hanlon's father, like what?
Right.
And Marge is Richie Tozer's mother, and going with all of those Easter eggs, she didn't have that, so she didn't have the biggest excitement about it,
Sure.
as we did watching it and picking out those things. So it didn't hit as hard for her. She did like the last episode quite a bit though.
Yeah.
And also I wanted to go back to the behind the scenes with Skarsgård that you were talking about. Like if they couldn't have got him for this, I don't think it would have happened. But if they did go forward, because money, controls everything, and they were going to do it if they're going to do it, it wouldn't have been as popular without Skarsgård.
I 100% agree with you. I think that this modern iteration, he's pretty intrinsic to this version of Pennywise. I think it would have a very hard sell on people that are familiar with it now. He's set the bar. It was kind of like, the Joker with Heath Ledger is like gonna always be, is gonna be one of those ones that's gonna be very hard to top. You can do it differently, of course, because everybody I think has an appreciation for like Tim Curry with the original one.
Sure.
And even fans of the original one can still look at this one and be like, it's genuinely pretty damn creepy, man. Like he's a good actor in this role. It's genuinely unnerving to watch him portray this monster.
But you know what, from It Chapter 2 to Welcome to Derry, It Chapter 2 almost had not even almost, even a little bit less than almost, thing like Freddy Krueger, where Freddy Krueger just isn't scary anymore, like basically after movie number 2. So Pennywise wasn't as scary to me in It Chapter, and for Welcome to Derry, they made Pennywise like super scary again. And he was much more brutal in this one than I think I saw your meme, like It Chapter 1 and 2 with the dog, and then and then Welcome to Derry is the werewolf or whatever that was.
I'll definitely throw that up so people can see it on the live version. That was my impression. That was kind of like both for the brutality of the series, because I do feel like they upped the ante significantly at certain points. But also just the general tone of this series was a lot more, because I agree. Chapter 2, it did almost feel like he was just a caricature, and not as menacing as it should be for the type of like horror that he is. Where Welcome to Derry, I think they were much more reserved. They didn't portray him too much. The points that we got with Pennywise, he was genuinely mostly just there to terrify the shit out of you. And then you would just like go to something else that was like, so far panned off from it. You had that moment to you kind of revel in it, but it wasn't an overexposure. Meanwhile, like in like later ones thinking of like, you literally have like Jason, Freddy, so many of these other horror icons. When you have like 12-year-olds are like enjoying their just like antics almost, it's like you kind of miss the point of horror.
Right.
Where this Pennywise is like, he's genuinely like one of the scariest like horror things right now that I can think of. And that last couple of episodes with him coming back from like, he'd already completed the feeding cycle, which was an interesting thing. So much
cool
of the
to see
feeding
that
cycle happened completely off screen.
It did.
17 children went missing, like 26 adults died, and they almost showed none of it aside from this black spot, which was a majority of the adults, but there was a bunch of kids that went missing. You only heard about Maddie as like the one, and then he's like going to bed, and that's when Halloran there decides, I'm gonna mess around with the wake him up with the breaking the the totem there. No, it wasn't
Yeah.
the totem. What was it?
Um,
They called them something.
yeah.
There's spires in the universe, but I don't know if they called them that in the show.
Right.
But nonetheless, like when they broke that, woke him back up after he was like going back into a dormant state, which is something I was like, wow, they could just apparently he could just do that. And the 27-year cycle was merely a suggestion all along. If he had enough reason to want to stay awake, I guess he could.
Yeah.
And then he literally just comes back because of the military messing around, unleashes hell on the entire town again, which I guess could have preempted a whole other like new phase of this if he had actually escaped from the town, because they were able to, spoiler alert, they were able to win. So we get another season of the show and we have the movies. So we knew they were going to, but
Right.
I mean, we didn't know how. And so that last episode, I was really like, the moment with Rich coming back, that was fantastically done to me. I thought that was such a cool moment because he was genuinely one of the few like characters in the show that I was rooting for the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when he died, I was like, oh, this is horrible. Like the one guy that didn't like, that literally did the right by pretty much everybody he encountered.
Yeah.
And then that was like what happens to him. And then he got that moment at the end. So I was like, that was really cool.
Yeah. He had his moment, and they know what they're doing, the writers and directors, like, because the one character that you really, really relate to and really root for, and that's the one they pull out from under you. But they gave us the moment at the end, which was great.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to ask you a question here.
Sure.
Well, let me ask you this first. Have you watched the first half of Stranger Things?
Yes,
Okay.
I did.
How do you feel it compares? Like, do you have one that you like more than the other?
I mean, as far as like the story, the content, and like gets my mind going, I definitely lean more on the side of it. Specifically, if I'm looking at just the series, Welcome to Derry has like such a like unique style to it. There's comparisons to be made, and I understand where some people will have definitely made them. But for me, it's like I like Stranger Things. I love Derry.
Yeah. I think viewing experience, being entertained wise, I think I side with the Stranger Things, and that surprises me. But because it took me so long to grow into the Welcome to Derry series, and it's only at 8 episodes, and for me, it really started knocking my socks off episode 4 on, and where I didn't immediately love it, and I played the first half of Stranger Things and was immediately enthralled and entertained. I'm like, okay, I'm having a better viewing experience watching Stranger Things, but for Welcome to Derry, I just love the lore, and all of it so much that it's still right up there. But I think, bang for my buck, I just had more fun with Stranger Things, which is probably I'm sure that's a hot take for some people, but that's just my opinion on it.
It may well be. I can understand definitely for the entertainment value. I mean, Stranger Things is a visually impressive show, of course.
Sure.
We've already been invested in these characters and the story for what has been 11 years, something like that.
Something like that. It's crazy.
We watched these children grow up. They're fully grown adults now in season 5.
Right.
And we're still supposed to I mean, part of my thing is like, I mean, the lore for obviously Derry, probably I'm slanted because it's got so much lore, and I enjoy so much of Stephen King's like work and stuff.
I know,
it's very easy for me to just be like, no. There's like so many cool like little Easter eggs and stuff.
Absolutely.
So I do have a hard time, admittedly, of separating the two. Because
Yeah.
I'm sure that if Stranger Things, aside from the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, which I'm always hyped when they bring up a new Dungeons and Dragons monster,
Sure.
and I can understand the relevance of it in Stranger Things. If they had leaned into that lore much more and expanded into such a bigger story than they did, where it's been the last 2 seasons, I'm very invested. I want to see where it goes, but I need to know its ending.
Yeah.
Where Derry, I feel like I'm only beginning to see this story.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I completely agree with all of that. It's, we're winding down with Stranger Things and we're just getting started with Welcome to Derry, which is crazy because that book is massive. The It book is massive, and there's a whole bunch of information in it. And the series does pull from a lot of that. But Welcome to Derry, in just 8 episodes in 2025, is expanding on something that's already really expansive.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to watch, and I literally cannot wait for season 2.
Yeah, definitely. I'm very much in agreement there, because that was pleasant surprise. I was not. I came in with very, very little hopes, because I was expecting fully for a show that was just going to be a cash grab. And especially with that
Yeah.
first episode, I was very apprehensive going in, because I thought, oh, they're just going to do a Stranger Things clone as
Right.
Derek. I
Yeah.
was very worried that was going to be the show we
Yeah.
got. And I was so thankful that it was so distinctly different.
Yeah,
And very good, because I feel like we hurt the feelings of some of the Stranger Things crowd that very much went in thinking, I'm going to love all these kids.
Yeah.
And then you get through that first episode and you're like, wait, this isn't the main cast. And I mean, I saw that reaction, but then I also saw people being like, because there was an old thing years ago when Stranger Things first started. I think it was season 2. So Bob in Stranger Things famously made that reference to Derry.
Yeah.
So we know in the Stranger Things canon, Derry exists. It's a connected universe. Theoretically, Vecna could simply be another entity that spawns off of the fathomless pit. That's Pennywise and the Mind Flayer could all be part of some larger species.
That's another entity, kind of like the outsider entity, like Pennywise. Vecna is just another one of those.
Right. And I think, I'm not sure right now in Stranger Things, because they kind of forgot about the Mind Flayer.
Yeah,
as being like the main threat.
Right.
And Vecna's become it. Now, I'm still not 100% certain, and this is not a episode about Stranger Things, but I'm not certain, is the Mind Flayer subservient to Vecna, or is Vecna something that was created from the Upside Down as like an independent force?
Right.
Because to me, it definitely seems like Vecna is a human that just got infused with the powers of the Upside Down.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Mind Flayer is actually an extra dimensional entity that has like far more power than we've even begun to grasp.
And that's the way that it works in my head. Like I feel like that's what it is. Yeah.
Cool. Good. I'm glad that I'm kind of understanding the show, because I've been like, that was a cool episode, and that whole season with the Mind Flayer being the thing, I was like, well, this is going to be awesome. And then we just haven't touched it since.
Yeah. That's weird.
And I get Vecna was a cool character and everything, but I was kind of like, I thought, honestly, we're going to get back to the big cosmic entities, because I dig cosmic horror. And anytime that I can get a little bit of that, I'm usually happier. So I thought we were getting there with Stranger Things, and I'm not going to expect much this last Christmas Day. We've got to wrap that up. We're going to be going back to Hawkins for a little while to see. And I guess then we can kind of be like, okay, here's the finale.
Yeah.
And then we'll sit down and have a chat about that one. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Stranger Things as well. So but yeah, going back to, you mentioned another season of Welcome to Derry. How about kind of get your impressions of the show overall, but what are your predictions for the next season?
Boy, oh boy. I mean, the way Pennywise himself opened it up to, this is all happening all at the same time for me. It has, and that end credit scene or mid credit scene with Beverly. that really brings into play any character from any time frame can come into season 2 now. And I just really think they're going to have a whole lot of fun with that. Like, are expected Pennywise in Welcome to Derry, which takes place 27 years before It Chapter 2, or sorry, It Chapter 1, that it would say beep beep, and make a reference to something that hasn't even happened yet. So, once all that got established, I think the sky's the limit. Predictions, I'm not smart enough, I don't think, for stuff like that. I'm really excited to see the Brady gang stuff, because that's like an actual thing that happened here.
Yes. I was going to ask you if you knew about that.
Oh, yeah,
that was when I got really excited when they pulled up that car. And
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, it's the Bradley gang. And I was like, that's the Brady gang. I was like, I know what that's about. So
Yeah,
that's actually my prediction for the next season,
yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah.
that's going to be the big event that
Yeah,
culminates the end
that's
of the
going to,
feeding cycle.
yeah, that's the black spot of next season. Yeah, absolutely.
How
The
that ties
shootout.
in, I have no idea. I can't wait to see.
Yeah, because did the black spot really tie in, other than it being the that final event? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Brady gang, or Bradley gang as it is in the show, that'll be interesting to see how it ties in. But I'm sure it's just going to be a plot piece to it's feeding, the way it ends, it's feeding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think some of the things that I'm kind of hoping to get to explore a little more, because there were some things I picked up on throughout this season, some notes that they were kind of like placing there. I mean, the Bradley gang being one of them, of course, because they definitely like bringing up that car and having those
Yeah.
items be there. I feel like that's like already kind of setting up, this is the era we're going to be looking at. So that's like something to look forward to, because I'm totally interested in how they depict that story.
Yeah.
I wonder how truthful it'll be to the real events. And,
Yeah.
if at all, it could probably just be a completely like Hollywood fabrication of a real story. And I'll be fine with it still, because I'm sure they'll make a good story out of it.
Sure.
But another thing that I'm very interested in was the aspects of it where they started to get into more of like the Penobscot history and things like that. Because, I mean, of course, living in Maine, the indigenous tribes have so much of an influence on the like culture up here. And their stories are literally what's kind of made a lot of the folklore throughout the entire state, even amongst like just, the white population.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of become intrinsic. And I don't think people really grasp how much of Stephen King's work is directly influenced by it, or his interpretation of it. And so,
yeah, definitely.
Because he definitely has a spin of it.
Yeah.
I've had conversations with people, both good and bad, about that.
Because there are, King does have some problematic stuff with some of his early Native American twists on some of his own lore, which is interesting. And but I was talking with Kevin from Where the Weird Ones Are podcast. He's down in Sanford. And we were talking a little bit about Welcome to Derry. I can't remember if it was on or off the show, but we were talking about a little bit, and we wanted to see a little bit more representation in regards to using the actual names like Passamaquoddy or Algonquin or Wabanaki, or using in Penobscot, using some of those actual names. That would be cool to if they started doing that.
Yeah, they were just kind of like vaguely, a trope.
Right.
Like they didn't
right.
identify who it was. I just took it as to be like part of the Penobscot because of the general area.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, we've got five tribes at least in that region right now.
Right.
So it's a lot to go from, and which particular lore they choose to go from. I mean, I know for some they probably wouldn't be as concerned, but that would be something cool to see later.
Yeah.
Especially if they're that's become now part of an intrinsic part of the story of Pennywise becoming bound to Derry.
Yeah.
That's literally now fully part of the lore story. Like, so they kind of need to explore that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the whole reason, Pennywise is stuck where he's stuck, and he's not unleashed on the world.
And I thought that was awesome how they handled that too, because that was
Yeah.
very, very much a revelation, which was neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't sure how they were going to expand on like Pennywise story, and they've definitely given us a lot of breadcrumbs, and they've given us a lot to go off of.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm really hoping, in kind of in relation to that, because one of the big things about, like, we talked about him being a cosmic entity, and where they started to tip their toes into the water, I'm wondering how much of the other parts of that universe we might get to see crossover, because we've already seen a direct crossover with Dick Halloran going to The Shining, afterwards, because he even references he's going to go cook for a friend for a while and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was, it was neat that they kind of created that little like thing to just give that nod to it. But going the opposite direction, how much more of the expanded universe could they build off of and then explain more of? Because I don't know if you noticed it, but when they bound the actual like stone, the meteorite that he had landed in, they bound it in a turtle shell.
Yeah.
Which of course has relevance to a lot of the tribes in the area, but it also has specific relevance to Pennywise.
Absolutely.
In that his antithesis
is the yin to his yang.
Is a giant turtle in space that puked up the universe.
Right.
And there were several points in that definitely seemed to be where they were leaning, or at least like that tribe, for whatever reason, had some knowledge of that. Because their ritual involved a turtle. They literally like referenced it later in the show, because there was another point where he even like said something about how like they had been watching it or something like that.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so maybe they will give us a little bit more of the actual real, like, way off origin of Pennywise.
Yeah, because that would be really cool. And I think even the school mascot, the elementary school mascot, was a turtle. It had that kid dressed up. I thought it was.
Oh my God, you're right. It is.
Yeah.
You're actually 100% right now that you mentioned that.
Nice.
Holy crap. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I completely missed that one.
So I'm not sure if that's just like little Easter eggs for, nerds like us, or if they were actually going to expand on it. And I don't think they would throw to it so much, to not expand on it. So I really hope they do.
Yeah. I kind of feel like it might be one of those things, maybe down the road. A little bit of a prediction, laying a little bit of a trap. I think maybe down the road we'll find out that the turtle being present means that he's like watching, or he's somehow influencing or aware of events. Because it keeps repeating so much in the series, and it's one of those things. It could be just like you said, an Easter egg, fun little thing for people that know. Cool, and they did that in the show. There's plenty of it throughout, obviously. But there's also that part of me that's like, if they're doing it intentionally, that's going to be a cool payoff if they go there.
Yeah.
It really they have opportunity. We already know we've got 3 seasons. So we're going to have another one, and then they already confirmed for one. I'm assuming they're going to go back another 27 years.
Yeah, I think they said like 1908 or whatever, go back. I mean, doing the timeline from the new movies, obviously not from the book, but and it might, when the Rose and the military general, like when they were kids, I think that might be season 3. I think that's the 1908 time frame.
That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Also, because that child that possessed Bob Gray was a kid, maybe he has some relation to them or something. I don't know. It's a guess. That'd be a ways off, but it's possible. And it'd be kind of cool to see. I mean, they've got a story already to start from. So that would be interesting.
They do.
I think I could get into that.
Yeah, and season 3 might be a lot more. It could be the Bob Gray season. You know what I mean? And which would be great.
Yeah, I would not mind hearing a little more, at least exploring a little more inside of the mind of that character, because that was definitely a highlight of the season for me. And I think if that's the only time we see anything of Bob Gray, I think that would be a vast underutilization of such a skilled actor to portray multiple roles, unless they somehow make him look like a 10-year-old child. I think Bill Skarsgård might be able to pull it off. If anybody could, I think
Yeah.
he might be up there.
Yeah, I agree.
We'll just see him age down through like CG or something like
Yeah.
that, and he'll just be, hey, they've done weirder shit lately. So
Yeah. And he's already has a baby face too. So
it's true. It's true. Yeah. He really, I mean, there were a lot of strong performances in the show.
Oh yeah.
It was just one of those ones that I don't think there was a person that didn't play their role like well. I get where you're coming from with Lily. She was a little hard to get, but I also think that's kind of that character. She's
and sometimes some certain characters in all sorts of different shows, sometimes they'll just be one that doesn't resonate for me for whatever reason. And for some reason it was Lily in this one. It's not that she did a bad job, I don't think, but they're just something that wasn't hitting for me. But we needed her to tell all of most of that story. So I'm obviously fine with it, but not my favorite part of it.
Yeah.
But that's just my dumb opinion, which means nothing to anybody. Like, please, like anybody listening to this, go and you have some sort of fondness for Stephen King, especially if you have a fondness for horror. I say you have to check out this series for the brutality of Pennywise. It takes a little while to get there because Pennywise doesn't show up, I think, till episode 4. Maybe is it 4? Yeah. And you actually see,
you might have seen a silhouette of him in 3, but then
and there were some characters that had the Pennywise smile that would pop up here and there, but you don't get Pennywise till like episode 4. So if you can hang in there, the brutality of Pennywise in this series is absolutely a phenomenon to watch. It's a spectacle. It's really well done.
Yes, very much. I definitely agree. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was a fan of Stephen King's work going in, so I was an easy sell on it, even if I was a little apprehensive about the adaptation style.
Sure.
But that being said, you're 100% right. Listening, don't let just our opinions ruin this for you. If you enjoyed it, let me know. Let us know how you felt about it. I'd love to hear other people's takes on the show.
Absolutely.
It's cool that it's such a multi-layered show where we can all look at it and see different things, pick up different takes from it. Yeah. We all have things we like and dislike about it, obviously. So
and no hate, no hate to anybody. If you liked it more than me, if you hated it more than me, the both of us, it's totally fine. Like, this is an all-inclusive, we come from it from a place of kindness and the love of horror and Stephen King, so it's all good. And and I think that sentiment really actually embraces and encompasses what Stephen King is about. He's always been somebody that, especially later in his life, is somebody that truly tries to embrace all sorts of people, and it that comes across in his politics and and the way he writes his characters. It's always been small town shining through.
Yeah, he's definitely evolved, and that's one thing I gotta I mean, to kind of wrap it up as far as like just the books and everything about Stephen King's work, and I do think that the series is very much paying testament to a lot of the work that he's done. It's very he gave them some notes supposedly to kind of work with.
Sure.
So he's involved, but it's also obvious that they're kind of expanding.
Oh yeah, they're totally expanding, and I see it as like a quasi love letter to Stephen King. I think Castle Rock attempted to do this, and Welcome to Derry is pulling it off, where Castle Rock had some missteps here and there. It's a great series, but it's not hitting on all cylinders. Have you watched The Institute at all?
No,
it's on MGM Plus, and I got the free trial just so I could watch the series. But The Institute is another kind of based on King characters. It's like the fire starter girl. She's from The Institute, and there's I think The Institute also comes up in the Dead Zone. So this is a series based on The Institute and like the origin of all of that stuff. And
neat.
Yeah, and it's pretty good, but it kind of reminds me of like Castle Rock. They're really trying to do something. It is entertaining. There's some cool stuff. There's some Easter eggs in there, but it's not playing it off the way Welcome to Derry is. Although Welcome to Derry has the budget that Castle Rock and the Institute does not have, so that's probably part of it. But that's some more King canon stuff. The Institute, definitely check it out. MGM Plus, do the free trial, and I think it's like at 8 episodes you can get through it before.
Breeze through that in a weekend or something. yeah, for sure. No, that's definitely one I think everybody should check out. Castle Rock, I've just started because that popped up on Netflix finally, and I was like, oh, cool, because I remember parts of it from years gone by when I started watching it, but I don't think I ever finished it. So I'm going to give that a shot because that's, I'm a fan of anything of the genre. So it's definitely going to scratch it.
And Skarsgård is in it. So you get more. You get more Bill Skarsgård. Which is really great. Also coming up is the new Carrie series, and from Mike Flanagan. And I think that's coming to Amazon pretty soon. They wrapped up filming fairly recently, so I'm sure that'll be coming soon. And I'm excited for that because anything Mike Flanagan does, I'm just in love with. So
yes, very, very, very talented. One of the ones that I kind of trust with series development and adaptations lately. So that's awesome to hear. I didn't even know that he was doing that, so that's cool to hear. I'll definitely be looking forward to that. But yeah, I mean, again, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed Welcome to Derry as much as we did. I loved getting a chance to sit down and talk with you, Nomar, about it. It was
and hopefully we made sense because we're just kind of fanboying too. Like for me, the last half of that series is so good.
Yeah, it really scaled very quickly from where I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, to where I was like, wow, by the end of the episode. Like that last episode 8 hit me like a truck, and I was like, this is awesome, and I hope that they can achieve that high again.
I'm
don't know how.
I know.
I mean, I don't know how, but I hope that they surprise the shit out of me by doing it again, because that was so cool. So
that last episode is movie length or almost movie length, so like you're in for a big treat for episode 8. So stick with it, and I hope if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. And you shouldn't be listening to this yet if you haven't seen it, so go watch it and then come listen.
Yeah, you're gonna come back and you're gonna be mad because we covered like the most important parts of it and then didn't give you any of the nuance in between. Like, how dare you spoil this random person on the internet? Like,
and there's a couple of podcasts that cover it, Welcome to Derry, and one of them is like sanctioned by the show, and I'm sure it's great. Go check it out. But the creators of the Kingcast also do a watch podcast, a watch and follow along podcast for it, Welcome to Derry, which is Eric Vespi, and Eric Vespi and what's his name? Wampler. They started the Kingcast, which is a podcast series. I think started in 2020 that covers all all movies and books of Stephen King, and they typically have a King related guest on, and it's such a good podcast. And so they're doing a watch and follow along podcast for it, Welcome to Derry, and I think it's just called Watching It, Welcome to Derry. And it's a great follow along. So you watch an episode and then listen to a podcast episode, and it's such a beautiful pairing of the two. So I definitely recommend checking it out.
That's always fun. I do like doing shows like that where I can watch along and get that podcast indulgence afterwards to kind of hear some different takes. Sometimes it'll make you notice things you didn't. I'm sure if they're doing an episode by episode, they're probably going to go way more depth, and it's gonna be awesome. So I gotta look that up.
Yeah, you gotta check it out. And these guys are like some of the most ultimate Stephen King nerds. So they know not just it, but they know all the books and all the connections. And to hear them talk about it is really great. So I definitely recommend checking out Watching It, Welcome to Derry.
Yes, definitely. No, sounds fantastic. I'll have to see if I can find them. I'll throw a link to their thing down in the show notes so that people can check it out for themselves. Awesome. Thank you, man. Anyways, dude, it has been awesome getting to chat about one wonderful fantastic experience the last 8 weeks, 9 weeks, I guess, because it's been a week after it wrapped. Yeah, that was a blast watching. Hopefully, it won't be too long before we get another season. I know they've already gotten the green light. Hopefully, they crank that out for us, and then we can. Hopefully, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Get back to do this again by the time that one comes out.
Heck yeah, dude.
Who knows by then?
I'm down.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, thank you all for listening. Definitely go check out the show, Welcome to Derry, for yourselves. You will not regret it. I know it might be a little bit of a slow starter for some, and for others, you might be hooked from episode 1. But guess what? It's the cool thing about horror. We all have our own things. And I mean, hey, I'm not going to yuck somebody else's yum. If you enjoy demon babies coming out of, a woman's body and then eviscerating a child in the back of a 1960, I believe it was probably a 62 Chevy, then you'll probably have a blast watching the show. And I hope you do enjoy it. If you did, come tell me about it. I'd love to hear more from you. Anyways, Nomar, always good to talk to you, buddy. We'll definitely do this again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you all for listening. Have a good one.